Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering to discuss its history, how it holds up today, and what our general impressions of the thing are. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, share, rate, review the podcast, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, it is nobody. It is another solo episode. Scheduling being what it is, just a little tough this week. So I decided to sit down this week to talk about X-Men, the animated series, specifically the episode titled Family Ties. And that is in honor of WandaVision debuting the day that this episode goes live. I had tossed around a couple other ideas, like I thought about maybe getting somebody on to discuss Age of Ultron, which is where obviously Scarlet Witch gets introduced in the MCU. And then I also discussed the idea with our team about, hey, maybe we'll just kind of postpone the show. We'll all, we'll sit down, watch the first episode or two of WandaVision when it goes live, and then we'll do like a late recording of the show dedicated to WandaVision. But again, couldn't get the timing to work out on that. So instead, I kind of said, okay, well, I know the X-Men animated series is now on Disney Plus. After the Fox acquisition and all that fun stuff, and so I was like, were there any good Scarlet Witch stories on there? Obviously, I think the most iconic Scarlet Witch story that I'm familiar with, at least, even though I'm not really familiar with it, but would be the House of M storyline, and that admittedly came out. I believe it's a Brian Michael Bendis storyline that came out well after the animated series was on the air. But the animated series does have this episode, Family Ties, which centers around the reveal that Magneto is, in fact, the father to Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, a.k.a. Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. So I thought, yeah, that's a quick, easy, especially if I'm just going to be doing a solo show. I can just hop in, watch that episode, sit down, record a little bit, talk about the episode, and bring it here to you, the listener. I'm sure we will, at some point down the line, probably once the season's all done at this point, probably do a dedicated episode to WandaVision. But in the meantime, I'll just be watching that week to week as we continue with this show as usual, I guess. So a little bit of history on both this episode in particular, as well as, of course, the X-Men animated series as a whole. Originally released, the animated series originally ran from October 31st, 1992 to September 20th, 1997. So in the Trevor Starkey timeline of things, I was, 7 to 12 there, I guess? Yeah. So this was like prime Saturday morning cartoons for me. This episode in particular originally aired May 4th, 1996. It is part of the fourth season of the X-Men animated series. And then other notable cartoons that I pulled in of the time, you had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I didn't realize how long that original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles run was, but it originally started back in December of 1987, going all the way up through November of 1996. You had Rugrats over on the Nickelodeon network starting in August of 1991, and it would run through August of 2004, so it had a good, long, healthy run. And then on the DC side of things, you had Batman the Animated Series running from September 5th, 1992, so basically a month before X-Men hit. Both kind of Marvel and DC were like, let's dive back into animation. And then Batman Animated Series ran until, not quite as long as X-Men here. It ran until September 15th, 1995. But I think, I didn't look this up, but I know that the animated series had like way more episodes a season, I think. So there's probably more Batman episodes out there than there are X-Men animated series episodes. But don't quote me on that. I did not verify that before sitting down and recording this. Runtime, your average episode here ran 22 minutes. In the Marvel animated series timeline of things, you had back in the 80s, you had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and The Incredible Hulk, which ran basically up until 1983. Spider-Man was in 1981 to 1983. Incredible Hulk was 82, 83. And then there was seemingly a big long gap for about 10 years. And then X-Men is really what brought Marvel back into the animated series side of things, which, as I said, ran from 92 to 97. And that kind of kicked off Fantastic Four, which ran from 1994 to 1996. Kicked off an Iron Man series that ran from 94 to 96. The Spider-Man series of this era ran from 94 to 98. And then they came back with another Incredible Hulk show in 96, 97. And then another one that was kind of a few shows down the line, but it was certainly also a staple of my, I guess, high school years, was X-Men Evolution from 2000 to 2003, kicking off pretty much around the same time as the X-Men universe of films back in 2000. So in terms of the roll call for this episode, you had, excuse me, director Larry Houston, who had directed 13 episodes of the Karate Kid series, which is ironic because I just, in the last week or so, have been binging the Karate Kid movies as well as Cobra Kai, so I thought that was a funny little grab here. He did 62 episodes of X-Men, and then he also did 12 episodes of the Fantastic Four. You also had, so this is going to be a slightly different kind of format for this episode, because I pulled in a lot of names, but I didn't really pull in their full lineage of things, because a lot of it is people that, you know, either were doing very specific things or they weren't doing really much of anything of note that I would really be able to point to and kind of discuss. So Fred Miller here was also a supervising director. I didn't really pull anything for him. Marley Clark, the writer for this episode, this was the only episode of the X-Men animated series she had ever done. He or she, I believe it was a she. But they had done 2 episodes of What's Happening Now, as well as 2 episodes of The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And that was it. That's the entirety of their IMDb page. 5 episodes, including this episode of X-Men. Starring, again, I didn't really pull up full IMDb histories of any of these people, but you have Cedric Smith as Professor X, Chris Potter as Gambit, who's actually not even in this episode, but he's one of the credited stars of the show. Cathal J. Dodd playing Wolverine, George Buza playing Beast, and then in this episode in particular, you have Paul Haddad playing Quicksilver, George Murner playing Magneto, and Susan Roman playing Scarlet Witch. Let me pull together, because I didn't remember to do it after, like, the IMDb page was like, all the trivia on this is spoilery stuff, and I did not pull that in. So let me pull that in, and then I'll probably just edit this little chunk out. Okay, I went to look up the trivia, and really the only trivia for this episode was basically talking about how it is revealed that Magneto is the parent of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. So yeah, not really trivia so much as the plot of the episode. So no real trivia to write home about this week. In terms of how does it hold up, it was very interesting going back and watching this, especially with the Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman kind of era of X-Men so ingrained in my memory over the last 20 years of my life, basically. Like, this is definitely a show I grew up with. I probably saw this episode. Nothing like really, rang any bells or anything came to mind. But I remember sitting down and watching this as one of the regular shows I would watch on, Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that. But like seeing and hearing other voices for Professor X and Wolverine and stuff like that is jarring now to go back to this show and hear those kinds of things. The intro song still great, so much so that when Disney Plus was like, "Would you like to skip intro?" I was like, "No. What kind of monster would click skip intro on the X-Men animated series?" It's just such a good thing. So I really enjoyed like that. Everything else, it was like there's a lot of stuff in this episode, and they cram a lot in to really kind of give you the like full like Quicksilver and Magneto are not, sorry, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are basically immediately whisked away to their childhood home in Romania, where they find out they were adopted from their adopted father on his deathbed, kind of thing. He tells them that they were basically brought to him by a midwife who was part woman, part cow, effectively, I guess. Bova, character's name, obviously kind of pulling from the bovine nature, I suppose. And then they basically go to try and find her to get more answers. Meanwhile, back at the X Mansion, Magneto just kind of like sneaks in and is having a conversation with Xavier, talking about how he's got a lead on Magda, this long lost love that he has. So it's like, okay, well, now as an adult and knowing kind of where the story's going, you can pretty easily piece together the parallel trajectories here of Magneto and his kids. They all end up basically winding up dealing with this character, the High Evolutionary, who verifies that yes, like the twins were born in his facility, kind of thing, way back 20 years ago, I guess. And the whole thing kind of is like it's very like hapdash a little bit in how it's thrown together. Most notably, kind of the wrap up of the episode where they all get captured and all that stuff. Xavier and Beast basically try and show up and help save the day. Wolverine gets turned into like a giant, like Wolverine, like beast creature kind of thing. And then suddenly just the High Evolutionary basically like gets his ship and flies it away, and the world around them just starts to like melt away, I guess, including Wolverine just kind of reverts back to his human form, and it's like, what? And it's just like complete, not even Deus Ex Machina so much as like the machine just leaves, and it's like they all make it out because the bad guy just like walks away for whatever reason. It's not even really like, it didn't really feel like it was made clear. But, as a result of all this, Pietro and Wanda find out, and Magneto finds out that they're his kids. And he has still lost Magda. He's still, torn up about that. But he basically tries to be like, I would have been a good dad if I knew you guys were around. In the very, Eric Lyncher kind of way. It was also weird after, 20 years of hearing him just referred to as Eric or Magneto, hearing him referred to as Magnus a lot in this episode. I imagine probably to really drive home the Magda kind of dynamic there. Magnus, as I looked it up, his middle name, so okay. But yeah, just that was another weird, like, this is jarring given everything that has come since. And then yeah, the thing just kind of like ends. Like, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are like you're still a bad guy. We're not on your side. And Magneto basically has to kind of deal with that. Another thing that is weird is, in particular, like Magneto's powers are in this. A lot of the times his magnetism is shown by like almost Captain Planeting. Like he holds out his fist and like a series of rings kind of goes and does whatever it's going to do. And then also he just has weird like control over things that maybe he shouldn't. Maybe like his power scope is very weird, because he not only is he like creating like electromagnetic bubbles around himself to fly and to protect other people and all that stuff. Like, it's okay, fine, whatever. But like, yeah, he's they all get kind of captured in this. I mean, based on color, I guess I would say like an amber kind of like hard substance, and he just kind of like breaks his kids out of it, and it's like, is there something magnetic about that? No, what? So yeah, lots of weird stuff going back to this series, and I'd be curious, like if I hopped into a handful of other episodes, if like I would get as hung up on plot beats and stuff like that, and powers and all that stuff. Because admittedly, I am just jumping in. I don't know, just off the top of my head, how prevalent Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were on the series as a whole. Like the actress playing Scarlet Witch is only credited as Scarlet Witch in this one episode. So I don't know if they had if she was a presence elsewhere and they like just had somebody else playing her, or what the situation is. Like they're all introduced and it's just a given that they're in X Factor. I'm like, okay, so I would guess that X Factor had probably been introduced somewhere else in the chronology of the show. This is 4 seasons in, so dropping into a single episode 4 seasons in, even in a series like that might not have had a ton of continuity going from week to week, probably had something that had previously established these characters. So yeah, it was interesting. Again, like the music, probably easily the best bits of it. It was also like sound effects were very noticeable. Like Magneto gets like wrapped up in a a thing on a tree at some point, and it definitely sounds like lashes, and it's not masked at all by other sounds or whatever. There's just a weird quality to the sound scape of, I guess, this classic show. And again, it's something that, like, watching now as a 35-year-old man through these things from 30 years ago or 25 years ago, who knows what the scope of that is by comparison, but yeah, it's weird show. Weird. I'm very much curious instead, looking forward to WandaVision and seeing how that all plays out. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. On a scale of A+ to F, I would give this, I'm probably like, I guess, like, and it's probably harsh, but like a C. Like, it didn't wow me really in any ways, apart from like just a nostalgic love for that theme song initially. I guess that, like, I'll bump it up to a C+ because they are clearly packing a lot of information into a single episode here, to kind of really fully flesh out the lie that these kids lived in, that like they were adopted and all that stuff, all the way up through the reveal that Magneto is their kid or their dad. So yeah, it's a lot there, and especially at a show targeted towards kids, it was probably a lot to handhold you kind of from point A to point B to really get you there. So yeah, C+. I'll go with the C+. But a lot of the like art style feels of its era, it hasn't been like remastered in a way that really like helps it shine, I guess. And so there's a lot of like, you can see a lot of the animation kind of shortcuts, in terms of still frames that other effects are being added on to, like, mask the low animation costs or something there. So yeah, anyway, extra credit, other suggestions from Disney Plus if you like this. You have Wolverine and the X-Men. You have X-Men Evolution, Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, Spider-Man, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, all of these being animated shows, many of which are of the era I mentioned earlier in the episode. And then lastly, The Avengers United They Stand. Extracurriculars, what else are we watching on Disney Plus? As I said, I will be watching WandaVision, but it is not yet out by the time that I am recording this. But I look forward to sitting down with, I believe they're releasing the first 2 episodes here on Friday the 15th. And then I think it's like 1 episode a week after that. But yeah, looking forward to diving into that, and just, it's because it's weird that this is the first thing we're getting of the MCU Phase 4 since Black Widow got delayed and postponed and has not come out yet. This is going to be like the introduction to the next era of Marvel movies following all the Infinity War stuff. So yeah, it's going to be weird. It's weird that we didn't get new Marvel in 2020. Whew. Yeah, crazy. So yeah, that is going to do it for this episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you for joining me. As always, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. Keep an eye out. We've been doing our Game of the Year stuff all week, so you can go check out all of that up on the site. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always help support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining me. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.